Hi, willkommen im Tartaria-Channel. Lasst mich mal schauen. Wow, alles gut bei euch? Ton, Bild, schreibt mir mal in den Chat. Hoffe, euch geht's soweit gut. Habt ihr auch so das Gefühl, heute ist so ein bisschen so, man ist ein bisschen schlaff, müde und ja, irgendwie seltsam. Ich habe mir, es ist, weil wir so viel Freude dran haben, noch ein Video aus dem Kanal mir rausgesucht. Wir sind Bäume von Casey Brown heißt der Mann. Und ich habe mir das angeschaut. Das ist echt super genial. Wird euch gefallen. Ich habe jetzt auch die Möglichkeit bekommen, mit ihm Kontakt aufzunehmen. Und ich werde auch das tun. Denke spätestens morgen. Ich bedanke mich auch lass mich mal schauen, im Telegram bin ich kontaktiert worden. Von Sme Again heißt er. Vielen, vielen Dank, dass du da eine Verbindung hergestellt hast. Und ich werde mich da auch dann zeitnah mich mit ihm in Verbindung setzen. Weil es scheint jetzt hier auch im deutschsprachigen Raum, ich sag mal, eine kleine Fangemeinde zu entstehen. Und das freut mich auch, weil wirklich viele Aspekte, die er hier so nennt und auch aus den Filmen herauskodiert, ist einfach genial. Und ich werde, wie gesagt, so eine Art Zusammenschnitt machen, wo er gemacht hat mit diesem Schimmel und mit den Portalen. Ich wollte es heute machen, ich habe mir das jetzt anders überlegt, weil dieses Video hier ist einfach zu genial, das mit euch durchzugehen. Zum Einstieg erstmal vorab, wir werden hier über das Thema Bäume reden und ihr kennt das bestimmt, wir haben ja schon im Kanal über Mudfossils gesprochen und ich habe hier mal kurz so Beispiele für euch rausgesucht. Hier reden wir über Versteinerungen, ja. Im Video Skulptur habe ich das auch angesprochen. Und, ach so, PS für euch. Ich zeige euch kurz was. Ich habe Unterstützung bekommen. Der Discord ist soweit eingerichtet. Ich muss jetzt nur noch schauen, wie das Ganze funktioniert, dass man dann auch, dass ich, wenn ihr live hier im Stream seid, entweder per Telegram muss ich das testen und auch hier, ich habe extra einen Raum eingerichtet. Da könnt ihr dann reinkommen. Und wenn jemand dann gerne mal mitsprechen möchte oder sein Wissen teilen möchte, den kann ich dann hier auch freischalten. Gib mir da noch ein bisschen Zeit, aber soweit steht es soweit. Wie gesagt, in Telegram und Discord sind jetzt da Möglichkeiten gegeben. Da sind auch unterschiedliche Räume für euch zur Verfügung gestellt. Da könnt ihr euch dann auch über bestimmtes Wissen oder YouTube-Themen und so weiter könnt ihr austauschen. Ich werde zwischendrin im Stream mal reinschauen. Und ich kann es auch, glaube ich, hier in OBS einbinden. Also Stück für Stück werde ich das hier noch aufbauen. Zurück zum Thema Mudfossils. Wir reden, wie gesagt, über Bäume, so wie ihr hier seht, den Devilstower. Der ist ja eigentlich das bekannteste von allen. Und es wird für uns ja als ein Berg dargestellt. Die Ureinwohner sagen ja auch diverse Geschichten über diesen Devil's Tower. Das wird unser Hauptthema heute werden in dem Video. Dann gibt es ja auch Versteinerungen, organisches Material, wie ihr hier seht, ja. Haben wir auch genug im Telegram-Kanal bei uns, Bildmaterial, könnt ihr euch da in den Medien mal durchsuchen. Hier auch, das sieht aus wie so ein Stück Speck, würde ich das mal bezeichnen. Hier so eine Art, man könnte schon sagen, es ist wie ein Gehirn, ja. Giants. Ich habe mal heute ein bisschen recherchiert, weil er hat ja über Alice im Wonderland-Syndrom gesprochen. Und da kommt ja das Thema Riesen zur Sprache. Und das finde ich sehr interessant. Ich recherchiere da jetzt noch ein bisschen nach. Ich werde auch, wie gesagt, mit ihm Kontakt aufnehmen, weil er da anscheinend sehr, sehr tief in der Materie auch drin ist. Und werde mich da nochmal schlau machen und werde es dann sozusagen in Deutsch verfassen und dann hier mal für uns sozusagen darstellen. Ist ja auch bekannt, dass es ja eine Epoche gab, wo alles auf Silizium basiert. Im Video Skulptur haben wir da auch ganz kurz ausgeführt, wie das Ganze funktioniert. Aber mega interessant, gell? Ich weiß, die Bilder sind jetzt hier ein bisschen klein manchmal. Ich vergleiche das mit dem OBS, dass auch alles läuft. Gu Ich nehme das Wort nicht in den Mund. Geht in die Suchmaschine und gebt ein mudfossil und Giants von mir aus oder ja, hier Tiere, Elefant zum Beispiel. Interessant. Schreibt mal eure Kommentare dazu. Ich freue mich immer, wenn jemand was schreibt. Na, hier, das sieht aus so ein Baum eingeschlagen. Hier sieht man ja diese Bienenwabenform, ja, von den Zellen. Ich denke, das ist auch ein ganz interessantes Thema. Und für euch habe ich jetzt mal so ein kleines Einführungsvideo, habe ich jetzt mal auf die Schnelle gesucht für euch. Hier. Der Kanal heißt Mudfossils University. Und ich denke mal, das ist super hier für zum Einstieg für euch. Ich mache es euch mal groß. Ach, übrigens, weil gestern wegen schwarzem Hintergrund und Untertitel, das tut sich immer ein bisschen schwer. Ich habe jetzt hier mal ein bisschen das umgeändert auf weiß. Ich hoffe, das funktioniert heute besser mit dem Lesen. Wenn irgendwas ist, wie gesagt, ich bin für Ideen immer hier zu haben. Lass uns einfach mal starten.
That's just the nature of tendons, and they are CaCO3. Okay, it's Roger once again, Mudfossil University with Devilstower, and in less than 2 minutes I will prove to you that this is the foot from some giant creature, and all of the anatomical details are here that prove this. First thing is it's cut flat as a pancake at the top. That is called the abrupt transition. This wrinkly zone up here is the zone where the tendinous fibrils, which are these, which are under extreme pressure, they are tendons, they wrinkle at the top. This fibrils are all CaCO3 porphyritic limestone, not marine limestone. Porphyritic means they have other inclusions in them, minerals that are part of connective tissue. The reason that they're separated is fascia. All right, the reason that they're hex is because they're hex. The reason that they're separated is because of what's called the fascia. They come down into tiny little fibers. That's just the nature of tendons, and they are CaCO3, the same thing that limestone is, CaCO3, calcium carbonates. All right, this tells the whole story. When the tendons break, they make that little wrinkly zone. That's the abrupt transition. They break literally flat as a pancake. These are the fibrils. That is the ball that is in the ground. That's just the way it is. And that is what is at Devil's Tower, and they are all over the earth. Whenever you see that wrinkled transition at the top, that was a tendon. Okay, this is called HD drone video of Devil's Tower, Wyoming. Now, look at what you're seeing here. There's the foot, there's the heel. It comes out this way. That is a no-toe. All this red stuff is all blood. That's all from bloody erosive tissues. There's a big difference between this, which is the limestone CaCO3 mineralized structural components of your body, and these fleshy components. All right, here's Devil's Tower. Now there's the Devil's Tower. That was that big foot. Now look at this. You see this down here? Nobody ever noticed this? This is not something you see every day. That's a crosshatch of a tissue type of muscle. So that's what it is. And it's all over the place here. I mean, this is not just in one spot. The guy died, and the stuff that erodes fell over and eroded, and some of it is seen. Okay, just quickly to finish up, this Mudfossil University, which is a home of truth throughout the world, and literally the only home of truth in the university system right now. We don't adhere to dogma. We don't listen to Einstein's theory of E equals mc squared when he says that light has no mass, and therefore light would have no energy. So there's so much that's wrong. It's time to pay attention to the things that are wrong and think about them. And that's what we do here. And up here we have at Mudfossil University a plethora of videos, and Max Planck and Harvard University have confirmed mudfossil DNA. Harvard has confirmed our light research. It's done the exact same experiments that we sent to them a year or so ago. Everything in this video arena here on Mudfossil University is confirmed, and we stand behind every word, and it's never been challenged successfully. So anyone that, when we have new species and all kinds of things. See, look. There's statues over here. Egyptian statue has a mummy inside of it. There's his ribs. It's crazy what's out there that's being overlooked. All right, so come to Mudfossil University on YouTube. And also, if you want, you can go to Mudfossil Originally Research Group on Facebook, and Science Mystery Solved, something like that. Science Mystery Solved, I think, is what we have, the third one. All right, thank you.
Interessant, gell? Also hier mal so wie gesagt ein kurzer Einstieg. Schaut euch den Kanal gerne mal an.
Okay.
Wer mit Mudfossils sich noch nicht so beschäftigt hat. Wie gesagt, es gibt Menschen, die einfach zu Stein geworden sind. Es gibt ja auch verschiedene Filme, wo das gezeigt wurde. Im Video Skulptur, wie gesagt, habe ich das ja gezeigt. Ja, hätte ich eigentlich mal raussuchen können, spaßhalber. Aber ich will ja jetzt nicht das unbedingt zeigen. Schaut euch das einfach mal an. Da wird es, wie gesagt, beschrieben, wie das Ganze zusammenhängt. Ich denke, den Stoff, den wir da reingelegt haben, es sind ja 3 verschiedene Kapitel, wenn du es so willst. Und da wird es auch erklärt, wie sich das mit diesen Pyramiden verhält. Man redet hier vom Betonguss. Geopolymer ist ein Begriff für Betonguss. Und auch die Versteinerung von organischem Material und so weiter. Ach, guck mal, hier gibt es auch eine Suchfunktion. Das ist nicht herrlich. Ja. Da ist es. Ich spule mal vor, wo das ist. Zum Beispiel in dem Part.
Aus dem Buch Henoch, Kapitel Sintflut. An jenen Tagen wird das Strafgericht des Herrn der Geister anheben. Und alle Behälter der Wasser, welche oberhalb des Himmels sind, außerdem die Brunnen, die sich unterhalb der Himmel und unterhalb der Erde befinden, werden geöffnet werden. Alle Wasser werden sich mit dem Wasser oberhalb der Himmel mischen. Das Wasser oberhalb der Himmel aber ist das männliche, und das unterirdische Wasser ist das weibliche. Alle Bewohner des Festlandes und unter den Enden des Himmels werden vernichtet werden. Moses, Kapitel 6, Vers 2. Da sahen die Kinder Gottes nach den Töchtern der Menschen, wie sie schön waren, und nahmen sie zu Weibern, welche sie wollten. Aus dem Matthäus, Kapitel 24, Vers 37 bis 39. Denn wie es in den Tagen Noahs war, so wird es sein beim Kommen des Menschensohns. Denn wie sie waren in den Tagen vor der Sintflut, sie aßen, sie tranken, sie heirateten und sie ließen heiraten, bis an den Tag, an dem Noah in die Arche hineinging. Und sie beachteten es nicht, bis die Sintflut kam und raffte sie alle dahin. So wird es auch sein beim Kommen des Menschensohns.
Ja, jetzt werden wieder einige sagen, oh, die Bibel ist wieder dabei. Leute, in der Bibel steckt halt auch viel drinne, das symbolisiert, oder es ist, ich sage mal, es ist eine andere Wortwahl wurde dort genommen, und um uns das sozusagen zu verbergen, würde ich auch sagen. Also dass bestimmte Wahrheiten dort verborgen sind vor uns, und das muss man halt dekodieren, wie alles. Und das Geniale an der ganzen Geschichte ist ja folgendes. Egal welchen Film wir uns anschauen, und das werden wir jetzt auch hier von ihm seinem Kanal zum Beispiel, es gibt ja noch andere Kanäle wie Gematria und so weiter, die das ähnlich dekodieren, was in den Filmen gezeigt wird, ja. Zum Beispiel Star Wars, ja. Ich habe jetzt von ihm hier noch The Battle for Your Soul Star, also der Kampf um deine Seele, hat auch was mit dem Cube zu tun. Wir haben ja gestern gesehen mit den Saturn Matrix, Moon Matrix, also Saturn Mond, der Mond, was symbolisiert der Mond? Ist ja der Minuspol auch auf unserem System, und die Sonne der Pluspol und so weiter. Auch die Case hat es auch mal aufgeschlüsselt. Und ja, und deswegen sage ich möchte gerne in die Tiefe mit den ganzen Thematiken gehen, wie sich das zusammenhält, also wie die Verbindungen sind. Und da spielt halt die Bibel halt auch ein bisschen eine Rolle mit. Das ist leider so. Und das ist ja auch das Instrument, was jetzt ich sage mal, seit Jahrhunderten ja auch viele unbewusst nutzen oder auch bewusst. Na? Und so, das mal zu dem. Ich denke, wir sind da auf dem richtigen Weg, uns Stück für Stück da durchzuarbeiten. Wie gesagt, heute das Mudfossil-Thema mit den Bäumen. Er hat es sehr schön hier mal aufgeschlüsselt. Super genial. Und ich möchte gerne das mit euch zusammen anschauen. Im Chat können wir gerne darüber auch diskutieren. Aber ich denke mal, einige wird es bestimmt mal interessieren, wie man das aus diesem Blickwinkel sieht. Ja? Und ich freue mich, dass ihr dabei seid. Also, lasst uns einfach mal loslegen. Ihr seht, 1 Stunde 54 Minuten, die werden sich lohnen. Definitiv. Ich schalte euch noch den Untertitel frei. Einiges werdet ihr wiedererkennen aus dem Video von vor 2 Tagen. Aber das macht auch nichts. Das ist wie in der Schule, ne? Schule. Und da, wenn sich ein paar Sachen wiederholen, da kann man auch besser nochmal nachrecherchieren und so weiter. Es gab auch geniale Kommentare. Er wäre jetzt so angeblich bibellastig und so weiter. Wie gesagt, es ist auch seine Perspektive. Ne? Man könnte das Ganze auch in Gematria dann auch aufschlüsseln. Wie gesagt, es gibt welche, wenn ich Glück habe, finde ich mit Sicherheit etwas, wo die Bibel über die Gematria aufgeschlüsselt worden ist. Aber nichtsdestotrotz ist immer irgendwo eine Information darin versteckt. Der eine sieht es aus dieser Sicht, der andere sieht es aus dieser Sicht. So wie wir das im Alltag ja auch kennen. Und da ist es wichtig, sich das für sich selber herauszufiltern. Meine Meinung. No? Gut. Trubel ist auch voll am Start. Freue mich, dass du da bist. Und natürlich auch der Rest. Super toll. Lass uns beginnen. Ich halte schon die Klappe. Ich bin schon ruhig.
The sixth angel sounded his trumpet, and I heard a voice coming up from the four horns of the golden altar that is before God. The four horns of the golden altar that is before God. And this is the cerebellum, the underside of the brain. And I saw another mighty angel come down from heaven, clothed with a cloud and a rainbow upon his head. And its face were the sun, and its feet were pillars of fire. And he had in his hand a little open book. And he had set his right foot upon the sea, and his left foot upon the earth. Now these other four bands of muscles coming in around the eye are the four angels at the four corners of the earth, with the four winds mentioned in Revelation. But this other angel coming out of the east fits the description of this muscle exactly. The little book is the trochlea. The trochlea, a bone that holds in this muscle here. And the angel which I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth lifted up his hand to heaven. Lifted up his hand to heaven, the hand holding the book. And swear by him that liveth forever and ever, who created heaven and the things that therein are, and the earth and the things that therein are, and the sea, and the things which therein, that there should be time no longer. But in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as he hath declared to his servants the prophets. And the voice which I heard from heaven spake unto me again, and said, Go, and take the little book which is open in the hand of the angel, which standeth upon the sea and upon the earth. And I went unto the angel and said unto him, Give me the little book. And he said unto me, Take it, eat it up, and it shall make thy belly bitter, and it shall be in thy mouth as sweet as honey. These are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks standing before the God of the earth. The two olive trees and the two candlesticks. The two candlesticks and the two olive trees, as you can see here. Here are the trunks of the olive trees and the tops. And here are the two candlesticks standing before the throne of God. And if any man will hurt them, fire proceedeth out of their mouth, and devoureth their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. These have power to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy, and have power over waters to turn them to blood, and to smite the earth with all plagues, as often as they will. What you're looking at is a cross-section of a flax stalk. And you're seeing that this person is comparing the various stalks or seeming stalks around the earth. Flat mesa surfaces with columns of hexagonal beams squashed together, just like the stalk. Just like the stalk. And this is simply amazing, because I believe now that we have another very specific piece to the puzzle, that these stalks that are coming up out of the earth, coated in a skin, just like the skin inside of the flax stalk. I believe that these were all hyaloid canals, conduits to heaven. And this is just simply amazing, because this was the missing piece to the puzzle. And I told you guys before that there were these structures around the earth, which is what you're seeing on your screen, coming up out of the ground. They look like stumps, as this YouTuber describes here. They look like stumps, except they're all cut off. Now, we talked about this lens here in the eye, and then when you cut right through the center, just like this, you get a cross-section of a honeycomb matrix. We also talked about the different areas around the earth. The Devil's Postpile in Mammoth and Giant's Causeway in Scotland, and how these large hexagonal features were coming up out of the ground, confirming the cross-section theory of the earth here, that this convex lens is where we live. We also told you about the dome being the firmament, that this was depicted in the Hunger Games when Katniss shoots her arrow, her arc, with a string attached to it, the hyaloid canal, into the firmament dome, which is all hexagonal. Just exactly what you're seeing on your screen on the left. And I will put a link in the description for that video that you're watching. And we understand that when you do a cross-section of the rods and cones that line this inner eye here, it also looks like a hexagonal honeycomb matrix. And this is the prison, you guys. But it goes even deeper, because you're wondering, why are they all cut off? As this gentleman is demonstrating in this video, why are all these stumps cut off? And I believe that it is because we have been cut off from heaven, because we've fallen into sin. And these may have even been the conduits by which we had access to heaven before the fall of man. Jack and the Beanstalk comes to mind, a knockoff story of a giant and a conduit to the heavens. Now, this is amazing because I don't think anyone's ever looked at this before, you guys. But this gentleman helped me put some more of the puzzle pieces together. Now, this is huge because it mimics birth. This hyaloid canal is the umbilical cord. And just like the umbilical cord in the womb for the child, this hyaloid canal disappears after birth. It falls away because its only purpose in vitro, or in the womb, was to feed the lens and develop the lens of the fetus inside the womb. And once the fetus is born, this disappears and only a remnant is left. And some people see that as floaters. So you see, we are now seeing more pieces to the puzzle, and the kingdom of heaven is within. We look inside to find the answers, and that's why this hyaloid canal is going from the outside to the inside. This is the narrow gate. This is the Red Sea. This is the wilderness. This is the flood. And over again, God was trying to show us the truth. And here we see the side-by-side that this YouTuber puts together for us that so effectively shows that these, in fact, do look like tree stumps. And on your right, you're looking at the rings of certain trees that seem to resemble the honeycomb matrix that we've been talking about. Were these conduits to heaven? Was this the fall of man? Possibly the angels at the gate guarding the garden. Was this an ancient forest of trees going to heaven? These are the questions that will become clear in the coming days as we continue to try to fight to find the truth. Why do we fight to find the truth? Why are we so relentless in our search? Because we know deep down in our heart that we've been lied to. We know we've been lied to. And we know that the truth is out there. And the controllers of this world do not want us to find it. We know who rules this realm. We know who rules this realm. And therefore we know that there are other answers and other ways for us to find the truth, if only we want it bad enough, if only we seek it. Now, what is the hyaloid canal? And how does that fit in with what we're talking about? Well, I'm going to show you. This is the hyaloid canal, the narrow gate. And 40 days and 40 nights was the flood. And 40 years the Israelites were in the wilderness. And 40 days Jesus was in the wilderness. And I believe this is the wilderness here. The child in the womb for 40 weeks. It all fits together, you guys. He was trying to show us the truth. The hyaloid artery is a branch of the ophthalmic artery, which is itself a branch of the internal carotid artery. It is even calling it a branch, like a tree. It is contained within the optic stalk. That's like Jack and the Beanstalk, the stalk of the eye. The branches extend from the optic disc through the vitreous humor to the lens. The optic disc being the back here, and then the lens extending through the vitreous humor through the wilderness, usually fully regressed before birth. Its purpose is to supply nutrients to the developing lens in the growing fetus. We are born then into sin. It is cut off, just like the images we're seeing around the world. And that is fascinating. Fully regressed before birth. During the 10th week of development in humans, the lens grows independent of the blood supply, and the hyaloid artery usually regresses. Its proximal portion remains as the central artery of the retina. The central artery of the retina, through which all vision comes through the central artery of the retina. Regression of the hyaloid artery leaves a clear central zone. This is the narrow gate through the vitreous humor called the hyaloid canal. Occasionally, the artery may not fully regress, resulting in the condition persistent hyaloid artery. More commonly, small remnants of the artery may remain. The remnant of Israel passing through the Red Sea, the remnant of mankind passing through the flood on Noah's Ark, and the remnant of God's seed, Jesus, passing through the wilderness for 40 days. Free remnants can sometimes be seen as floaters. An anterior remnant of the hyaloid artery can be seen in some people as Mittendorf's dot, a small pinpoint-like scar on the posterior surface of the lens. A posterior remnant may be seen where the artery left the optic disc and is known as Burgmeister's papilla. The Burgmeister's papilla is the remnant of the artery left on the optic disc, which looks probably a lot like this. And you can't make this up, you guys. This is the truth.
And there are these two trolls. They're trying to stop the incoming ships of the New World. They grabbed and they pulled, but the ships were too strong. And the sun rose and turned the trolls to stone. And they left these petrified markers as a kind of gateway between the ancient ways and the New World. Petrified markers as a kind of gateway between the ancient ways and the New World. Left these petrified markers as a kind of gateway between the ancient ways and the New World. It's like they were waiting for us to bring in everything that was clean and good and fresh. I always liked that. Between the ancient ways and the New World. Left these petrified markers as a kind of gateway between the ancient.
And this is all about the as above, so below. Two worlds colliding, passing through the veil, through other dimensions. We also see the blue bloods coming forth. As you can see, his gun is actually blue. And also, there's a quick scene here where you see that it shows Pennywise. Well, the original pennies were 100% copper, which is the blue blood. Here is the Pennywise. You see the bluish fog. We've talked all about the pennies and the copper and the blue bloods. And now we're about to see this all played out in this film. Black versus white. Here you see the blue effects on the gun, the glowing blue gun, and of course, the tower. Now, I believe that this tower represents the as above, so below. And I believe these are the trees that once reached to heaven. So again, we're seeing this repeating pattern in all of these films and trailers. We saw it in Transformers the last night. These pillars reaching into the heavens, connecting two worlds. We also saw it in the new Star Wars film. We saw these trunks of trees being cut off from heaven. So I've told you guys before that the word El also means a type of pistachio tree, the terebinth. And so now we have Elba, Idris Elba. El also means God. So where's all this heading? So now that we know that Elba contains the word El, which means tree, and this movie is all about a tree, basically, a tower that looks like a tree trunk. This confirms the decode that we just carried out. It confirms our beliefs that this tower isn't a tower at all, it's really a tree trunk. Undeniable at this point. So I decided to look further into Idris Elba's name, the 44-year-old who is going to be in this film. And I couldn't believe what I found, because his name, Idris, means ardent Lord, and is also the name of Idris, the Islamic prophet in the Quran, usually identified with Enoch in the Bible. So his name means Enoch the tree. This is unbelievable. And that's what this is all about. Now, this is shocking because what we find with Alien Covenant as film pulls directly into biblical themes. This is actually the patch from the actual movie cover poster. Journey continues. It says, Alien Covenant. There's the green, which is the serpent green, but what you're going to also notice are the two angels here that were actually atop the Ark of the Covenant, named Covenant, and then it's got the angels here on Earth. Now, the numbers mean everything. When you count these ley lines across this globe here, you get 7 going in this direction and 7 going in this direction, which gives us 77. And we are, in fact, in the Hebrew year of 5777. This all means something, and it goes very, very deep. Now, here's the patch. Let's go here. What is a covenant? Well, simply pulled up Wikipedia, and here it says right here in plain sight that these were covenants between man and God. And there is a little bit of debate as to how many covenants there are, but it states here that there are roughly from 1 to 12. It says right here. And so what does that mean? Well, when I looked at the number in the cast, the number of people in the cast of Alien Covenant, there are 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So now we have more links to biblical themes. Now this goes very deep because these biblical themes also go back to the original serpent seed doctrine. What originally happened in the Garden of Eden, when all of this started, there was an infection of humankind. And they actually demonstrate that here, the mixing of the seeds. This is another movie cover poster. These men are called the engineers, and they actually engineered these aliens so that they could use them as like practice, like games. And then the aliens then turned on them, went out of control. And the plot, this is where the plot of the film series Aliens actually comes from. And of course, here you see on the patch, another part of the patch is the scarab. This is the scarab beetle. Okay, now we've covered this because, and you're going to see how all this links in together. This is the patch for Wayland Industries, the people that are basically funding all of this outer space research. And this is where these humans keep running into these aliens in outer space, right? It's the scarab beetle. The wings, okay? Transforming bodies and souls is what Ra did. Beetles of the Scarabidae family, the dung beetle, rolled dung into a ball as food as a brood chamber in which to lay eggs that are later transformed into larvae. For these reasons, the scarab was seen as a symbol of the heavenly cycle and of the idea of rebirth and regeneration. The Egyptian god Khepri, Ra is the rising sun, was often depicted as a scarab beetle or as a scarab beetle-headed man. The ancient Egyptians believed that Khepri renewed the sun every day before rolling it above the horizon, then carried it through the other world after sunset, only to renew it again the next day. So now we begin to understand what this means. You see, there's the world, the sun, and actually show the heavenly bodies in here, the sun, moon, and stars, the beetle rolling it away. But what you're going to notice is that the wings of the angels, now listen carefully here, this is crazy. The wings of the angels that are shown here on the Ark of the Covenant, which was a holy covenant between God and man, are in reverse for the scarab beetle. Are you starting to understand what's going on here? Opposites. We've got the wings going out here and the wings coming in here. Now, let's continue on with this because this is pretty fascinating. But what I noticed is that the night sky, this is what it looks like at the equator. The stars move as twin opposed vortices. So this is the North Pole star. This is the South Pole star, even though I don't believe there's a pole down there. Stars rotate around They move up in the middle vertically, and then they spin around clockwise in the southern hemisphere and counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere. And it makes this mirroring effect, this bizarre mirroring effect that can only be explained by some kind of overhead vortices. And if you go into your kitchen cabinet and you pull out some spoons and you look on one side of the spoon, you'll see your reflection right side up. But if you turn the spoon over, you will see your reflection upside down. Now, what does all that mean? Well, we have two lenses, and the Scarabaei beetle, the dung beetle, seems to show us two lenses, a spoon one way and a spoon the other way. This was fascinating. They actually show these tree stumps. Again, they're repeating these themes, you guys. What is the tree stump? Well, these are the umbilical stumps. We talked about this. These trees used to reach heaven. And they're repeating these themes. This is actually from Transformers, the movie. They're showing us the tree stumps. But basically what they're showing us is these umbilical stumps. These are the actual tree trunks, but left behind are the stumps. And then you can see clearly that they're showing us the hexagonal matrix. These stumps, residual stumps that are left over all over the planet, look exactly like these hexagonal patterns. Giant's Causeway in Scotland. We have the Devil's Postpile in Mammoth, and we have the Devil's Tower in Wyoming. They all have these hexagonal structures of rock. Now they're calling them basaltic rock, okay? Columnar basalt. And they're saying that it's actually created by the magma inside the earth, and somehow they just naturally settle into these perfect hexagonal patterns. And we see these stumps dotting the entire earth. But then why are they showing us this? And we had already discovered this before this trailer ever came out. This is from Transformers. They're showing us the stumps again in Alien. Here's another one from Transformers. They're showing these trees that used to reach all the way to heaven. We're not making this up. We're discovering it, and then after we're discovering it, they're putting it in movies, or before or after. And to me, that's fascinating. It's almost as if we're one step ahead of them, and they can't keep up with them because their goal is to fictionalize the truth. That is what they're trying to do. And this doesn't happen once on this channel. This happens almost every week. Something that we talk about later is profiled and shows up in these films. Okay? That's simply fascinating. Now, obviously, the alien spacecraft kind of looks like the eye model. A little bit of a stretch. Some people have compared it to the inner structures of the brain, the fornix, as possible. Okay? But I wanted to make sure I got all this across to you guys. The covenant that God made with the Israelites, comparing that directly to this, it's undeniable with the wings covering the Ark of the Covenant. There are 12 total covenants in the Bible, 12 in the cast of the film. And I did forget to mention this, that these covenants involve the cutting out. Now, this is fascinating. Okay, here it says here, this is in Wikipedia regarding covenants. And let's see, let's just do a search. Oops. Okay, covenants in the Bible were often sealed by severing an animal, with the implication that the party who breaks the covenant will suffer a similar fate. In Hebrew, the verb meaning to seal a covenant translates literally to cut. Okay, now what is that about? Well, what else did we see in Alien? Well, these things cut themselves out of the person after they've infected the person. They pop out of their chest and their back and stuff like that. So that may be a clue that links those two together. Now, this is all goes back to the seeding of the planet. And in fact, in the original trailer, it says path to paradise begins in hell. Okay, so it's pointing back to paradise. It's pointing back to the Garden of Eden, and this is all about the aliens seeding the planet. So who are the aliens? Obviously, it's the devil. That's what the alien really is, and they infect people with this black goo. Okay, it's like this. It's this goo, like the canopic jars of ancient Egypt. So here's what I'm talking about. We've covered this in a previous video, but I want to go over it again. This all goes back to Egypt. Okay, that's what aliens is about. Egypt. Now these are canopic jars, and inside these are from ancient Egypt artifacts, is the DNA of these ancient pharaohs. Okay. And what they do is they put the vital organs, the heart, all that stuff inside these jars, okay? They seal it up, and then this represents the DNA. Over time, those organs turn into a black goo. The same black goo that's in Prometheus. And you guys, no one's talking about this stuff, okay? No one's talking about this. Only on this channel. This is from Prometheus. Here's the same canopic jars, and inside is the black goo, just like ancient Egypt. Talk about references to ancient Egypt in the alien films, but yet it's all around. It's like everyone's asleep. So inside is this black goo. They go into the alien spacecraft. They find all these canopic jars lining the inside of the spacecraft. One of them has this black goo, this goo in it, and it ends up infecting them. Just exactly what I just told you. The themes going back to the original Bible. So this is where I get confused, where people are in denial that the Bible's real. That's all Hollywood talks about. All of their themes are about the Bible. So that's pretty much the material on this, you guys. Again, people aren't going to find this anywhere else. Here's some more images of the canopic jars. I want to see if they've got any with the actual goo in it. Aliens represent the gods, okay, which is what this is. The false gods, all right. They also want to insinuate what they want you to believe is that these gods are the real gods, okay, like the Elohim, and that they release the devil onto earth just for their own, pleasure and entertainment and sport. That's what they want you to believe, okay? That's what this whole theme is about. These guys released this, the devil got out of control and is roaming the galaxy and the universe and all the planets, basically using us as food, okay? And nothing could be further from the truth. It wasn't intended that way. What was intended is that we're given a free thought. The universe are given free thought. Some choose evil, but perfect love of the Father allows us all to have a choice, okay? And then we have to live with our consequences, okay? That is what's going on here. But this is what I believe the tree stumps are. So this is the hyaloid canal. And I believe God incorporated into our own DNA and anatomy the truth about the universe, the shape of it, what it looks like. Why would he do that? To give us faith and also to help us understand and point back to him as the true God. The person that created us is the person that made our bodies, that also created the world. It's the only way we would have proof without actually being able to touch him and see him, right? So this is my personal belief. We've done a lot of work on this. Here's a good one. I believe we live here atop this lens, okay? And the stars are in the firmament fixed, but the Spirit of God that went above the waters, right? As it says in the flood, the Spirit of God was upon the waters. Actually, that was said in the book of Genesis where the creation was happening. I believe is the vortex which creates the stars spinning. They're not actually spinning. I think they just look like they're spinning. It's the lensing effect that I told you about. This is the scarab beetle. Remember I showed you that there was two spoons Okay, well look, what do we have here? We have a spoon there and a spoon here. So between the two of them, we get this rotation, okay, which is what I showed you on the spoons earlier in this broadcast. I know this is a little complicated, but bear with me. Imagine this is flipped on its side. If we live here. Now, as I told you, there's these tree stumps all over the earth. Now, they're not calling them tree stumps. They're calling them columnar basalt structures. They're everywhere. There's columnar basalt all over the earth. Here it is. I'm not making this up. It's all perfect hexagonal structures, just like the tree stumps in Transformers the movie. They're everywhere. Here's a really good example right here. Perfect hexagonal structures. They're saying this formed naturally. They're saying this is from magma coming out of the earth. What happens when you think for yourself? You begin to uncover the truth. Then you begin to understand that there was once a garden on earth, and that garden we're now cut off from. The keywords cut off, right? So I just showed you columnar basalt all over the earth. I also told you we probably live atop this lens. When you cut this lens in half, it's called a cross-section in real life inside the eye. It has the same hexagonal matrix. It has the same hexagonal matrix, which indicates that these stumps were once dotted all over the surface of the planet, and they reached to the garden and heaven. What is the garden, Casey? The garden lines the entire inside of this eye. It connects us to the stars that are in the firmament. What are you talking about, Casey? The garden is the rods, the cones, bipolar cells in the ganglion that line this eye. They look like the fruit, which would be in a tree. They look like figs, pomegranates, and grapes. That's exactly what they look like. We've done lots of videos on this. So the tree of life, this is the hyaloid canal. It is a remnant left over. Remnant left over after you're born. The artery inside of this hyaloid canal disappears, but you see floaters, and they call them remnants. That is what the technical medical term is. This used to be maybe the tree that reached to heaven, the tree of life that connected us to the garden. We are now cut off from the garden. We're cut off from the stars. Book of Enoch says each of us have a star in heaven, and we are connected to that star. Now you know what enter the stars means. And I didn't know, I had not the foggiest idea when I chose that name that I would discover all this years later. But you see how everything comes full circle. And here's what's amazing. Not only does you have a cross section here of this, and it makes this hexagonal honeycomb matrix that matches exactly these basalt structures all over the earth, but you also get the same when you cross section a sliver of the rods and cones. They also show us the matrix. Now, were they originally like that? I don't think so, because a hexagon is like the hex. That's the curse. That happened after we were severed. Once we were severed, everything retracted and basically went back to like a beast state. That was the hex put upon the earth because sin entered the world, right? So therefore, we're cut off from our star. We're cut off from paradise. We're cut off from the garden, right? And the spinning swords that blocked the way to Eden, talked about in the book of Genesis, there were two cherub with spinning swords. I believe that that's the vortex, and that's why we see the star spin in the sky. Those are the two spinning swords of the cherubim blocking the way back. That's why the night sky is dark. I think originally it was probably more brilliant. You could see with a lot more resolution, but we're all cut off. And of course, we're observing all these things through our eyes, right? So there are actually 3 layers of the hex. I just described to you one in this wall here. When you do a cross-section of the rods and cones, it looks like a honeycomb hexagonal matrix. There's also one here when you cut this lens in half, and there's one more inside the cornea. It's called the, there are 3 layers of the hex. So That's what these tree stumps, I believe, are. This is where things get interesting. I believe is the silver cord. It's also the umbilical cord. When this stump, this trunk of the tree goes up, it hits the retina and it branches out. So now you have a tree with fruit in it. The tree of life, I believe this was, in the middle of the garden. You see how that works. This is the trunk, goes up. This artery inside of here connects with the retina, which shades this like a giant umbrella. And it is a tree. That's what it is. I'm not making it up. That's just what it is. Now, this remnant, we've seen this over and over and over again in the biblical narrative. This remnant is Noah in the ark, in the flood. There were 8 left, a remnant left, the seed of God, left as they passed through. Here's the ark. The lens is arced. Passed through the watchers, the flood. This is all filled with water in here. It's called the vitreous humor. They were in here for 40 days and 40 nights. It rained, right? The tears of God raining down inside of this cavity. You can almost see it playing out as you follow the path, okay? Okay. And we also have, who else talked about this? David said, I shall walk through the valley of the shadow of death. The Lord God is my rod and my staff. Here's the rod, here's the staff. It's the star spin in the night sky, you guys. We saw it again in the Israelites that were in the wilderness for 40 years. As after they passed through the Red Sea. Here you're looking at the Red Sea. The remnant, Israel was the remnant passing through. They had the Ark of the Covenant with them, right? Leading the way. God protecting them. We also had Jesus who fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. Okay? He was the remnant seed. He was the one seed. And he passed through his wilderness. It's all about passing through this wilderness or the void or the womb. We all have to pass through the womb. We all have to be born into this reality, born into sin. Okay? And it just so happens that a child is in the womb for 40 weeks. See, do you notice all the 40s? Here's the umbilical cord. The retina is the placenta. Child is upside down. Here's the cervix, the crown. Child crowns. Child is upside down, and when the image comes in through your eyes, it's upside down, it's inverted. It's a perfect analogy. There's water in here. This is the amniotic fluid. But we forget. We get amnesia. We forget, don't we? When we're born. Amniotic fluid, amnesia. There's a reason why both of those words are the same. Now for the good part. The salvation plan. So because even though we're all born into this reality, we're born into the material realm, looking out into the material, which deceives us. God's given us a plan, and that is Jesus Christ. How, Casey, what are you talking about? Well, these nerves, these optic nerves, they cross in the middle. And where they cross is called the optic chiasm. It is also called, there's a literary structure of an outline structure when you write poems and books and things. The Bible actually follows the literary structure called the chiastic literary format, which is the same name as the optic chiasm, which is the crossing of the optic nerves at the center of the brain. And guess what they call the chiastic literary format? It is an outline form of A, B, B, A. In other words, you start telling the story and you tell it backwards. Well, what is ABBA? That is Abba, which also means Father. Abba, Father, take this cup from me. You see how God loved us so much? He basically shows us within our own anatomy the way back to him. This is the optic chiasm. I'm going to show you the cup that Jesus was talking about. This is it here, the optic chiasm view image. Here it is, the optic nerves cross in the middle. This is where Jesus was crucified. It's very near the pineal position. Remember, when he was crucified, there were two thieves at his right and left sides. He turned to one thief and he said, "You will be with me in paradise." Why would he say that to one thief? Because that was the thief that believed in the Lord Jesus Christ. Here are the rooms with many mansions, talked about in Revelation, for those who believe. Here's the optic chiasm. Remember, this is called ABBA, literary format for writing poems, and many books of the Bible are actually written in the chiastic literary format. Why would God do that? Because he wants you to see. He wants you to know him on a much deeper level than we're being taught. And all this knowledge is being hidden from us because they don't want us to have a direct link to God. They don't want us to see this. But watch this. Jesus was crucified at the place of the skull. It's called Golgotha. Here we are in the skull. Here are your two thieves. Here's the cross. And I'll let that sink in for a minute. He said, cast your net to the right side. Here's your neural net. Why the right side? That is the Messiah side of your brain. People who are right brain thinkers believe in a Messiah or a Savior. He said, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. This is all in the Bible. Because your right is controlled by your left side. He's telling you to cut off your left brain, your scientific brain. Believe in the Messiah. You see how I could not have possibly made all that up? That is a gift of the Holy Spirit to know God better. Also, we also know that Goliath's head was buried here. Christ was crucified. So through the pathway of light coming in through your eyes, that's where we find the truth. That's where we get to know God. Now, some people will try to say, oh, well, all of this is just an analogy then. The Bible's not real. No, nothing could be further from the truth, you guys. Basically, what has happened here is there's no one in their right mind that could possibly have understood all of this physiology back when the Bible was written except God himself. So Christ is showing you the pathway back to him. He's showing you that don't look out. He says the kingdom of heaven is within. In other words, the truth about the kingdom of heaven is inside of us right here in our physiology. And that to me is spectacular and amazing.
Today, we're going to talk about the stars in the heavens and the sand of the shores. Now, God said something fascinating in the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis, found with the Dead Sea Scrolls, dating back to 100 BC, which is over 2,000 years old. Long before there were telescopes and microscopes. This is what God said about the sands in the sea and the galaxies and stars of the heavens. He said that Abraham's seed, his seed would number as the sands of the sea and the stars of the sky. Let's read the verse in Genesis 22:17. That in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore. And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. Now it's interesting because stars and sand are again compared in the New Testament in Hebrews. Therefore sprang there even of one, and him as good as dead, so many as the stars of the sky in multitude, and as sand which is by the seashore, innumerable. Now, I don't know who is speaking these words. Maybe this was Paul. But this is fascinating because basically they were quoting this Genesis account. Now, let's go on. Why is what God said so fascinating? Well, because when Genesis was written down, thousands more years before the oldest copy that we have of it, nobody had a microscope and nobody had a telescope. But the one and only true God knew that the microscopic sand and telescopic galaxies are almost identical in shape and form. Let's take a look at some of these images. These are galaxies. Some of these galaxies are viewable with normal telescopes, so this isn't something that NASA is lying to us about in this instance, because we can see some of these galaxies with our telescopes. Here are more galaxies here. This is called a barred spiral galaxy because it's got a bar across the middle of it and it spirals. Here's some images of galaxies here. As you can see, there are a couple of different basic forms. The spiral, as well as these bars, or like almost looks like a stick. Okay? Those are the two basic forms of galaxies. Now there are other peculiar forms of galaxies, but one thing emerges. One truth. And that is that these spiral shapes mimic the spiral and bar shapes of microscopic sand, which is what you're looking at now. Now wrap your brain around that for a second. Before there were telescopes or microscopes, God was asserting his dominance and infinite wisdom of the things he had already created. And he basically told everyone, long before he knew they would discover it, that the shapes of the sand in the below and the galaxies of the above would be the same. Now, when I first discovered this truth about 3 years ago, because many of you that have been on the channel, this is your second or third time hearing this, I was fascinated. But sadly, with the cognitive dissonance and the attack on the Bible, a lot of people write this kind of information off. So it's my job to do my diligence and give you a detailed account of this miracle in the uncovering of deeper meanings of the Bible. And this is why we have to be so thorough in our work. So another fascinating truth emerges when we look at this, and that is that this sand that is at the seashore is, of course, suspended in the sea, right? And if we think about the upper waters of the heavens, which God says there is water up there, the galaxies are also suspended in water, just like sand. Now, I don't believe these galaxies are as massive as NASA tells us, but think about this for a second. Moving about above us.
Mach mal kurz eine Pause. Hans, ganz kurze Erklärung, dass du ein bisschen, ich weiß nicht, wie weit du das verstehst. Was er hier versucht jetzt klarzumachen, ist, diese ganzen Galaxien und Sterne, die du siehst, diese Fotos von der NASA, ja, das sind alles CGIs, computergenerierte Bilder. Alles, was du von den Planeten und so weiter, das sind alles CGIs. Und er beschreibt jetzt alles aber auch so, wie im Mikrokosmos, so auch im Großen, also wie im Großen, so auch im Kleinen. Und in der Bibel steht auch geschrieben, über uns ist Wasser und wir hatten ja die Sintflut und so weiter. Und das ist alles, was jetzt hier in dem Video sozusagen beschrieben wird. Unter anderem, ja. Wir leben auf Wasser und wir leben unter Wasser. Das habe ich vorhin auch in dem Trailer gezeigt, in dem Video Skulptur. Das Wasser kam von oben wie auch von unten und so weiter. Und er beschreibt jetzt hier sozusagen, dass die NASA uns auch anlügt in vielen Sachen. Und das hier, diese Galaxien und so weiter, das sind Reflexionen. Ja, Reflexionen. Da gibt es auch bestimmte Bilder, die zeige ich nachher vielleicht nochmal schnell. Ich suche mal welche raus in der Zeit. Da kann man sich das dann mal anschauen. Also im Teleskop, was er auch erwähnt hat, wie kann es sein, dass eine Bibel geschrieben wurde und die Menschen ja noch gar kein Mikroskop oder irgendwas hatten und die Anatomie des Menschen so gut verstanden haben. So mal als Hintergedanke zum Nachdenken. Ich denke, vielleicht hat dir das ein bisschen geholfen und ich habe übrigens Kontakt jetzt mit Casey aufgenommen, der besteht und habe ihn auch um Erlaubnis gefragt, Aspekte hier zu übersetzen. Ich werde mal was zusammenstellen und werde das dann auch übersetzen und dann nochmal eine deutsche Fassung machen. Na? So nebenbei. So, weiter geht's.
Us are the galaxies in the tides of the heavens, in the tide of the heavenly waters, just like the tides down here below in the sands of the sea. In other words, above is the same as below. It's a nested reality, which is everything we've been talking about. How things are within things. Now we're going to go on because there's much, much more to the show. Some new revelations, some new insights. Just as the sands wash against the shore, the galaxies wash against the inner firmament. And I believe everything that we're seeing up there is inside of the firmament and much closer than we're told. But because of the telescoping effect, the lens effect, everything seems like it's so much further away. It's comparable to what you'd see when you go into a planetarium. And there's this giant dome ceiling. And they project the stars onto the top of this inside of the firmament of these stellariums, right? This is what I believe we're looking at. And so we've gone over this spiral pattern that's prominent, these barred patterns that are prominent. And so you begin to wonder, is this the gate? Are these gates? Is this why the enemy is so consumed with the spiral shape? Is this the gate through which he fell? And that fallen angels falling through these gates of galaxies down into the below. And they so badly want to go back through, but they cannot. When water drains, it spirals. And these are more clues about what galaxies actually might really be and the medium in which they sit. Water drains into a spiral. It's interesting because some of you I saw in the chat from Australia know that down there, water drains in the opposite spiral direction than it does in the northern hemisphere. And so there's some force acting upon that. Now, of course, we know what science tells us, but we want to prove these things for ourselves versus being told what it is that is actually going on. But something changes when you cross the equator. There's a reverse spiral motion of all draining water. Now, I've told you about the water and that water represents gates. So now you're starting to see all this come together. This spiral in the medium of water, in the upper heavens, the water below, spiraling down a toilet, for instance, or a drain. These are gates. And we also know that the elite call spirals gates as well. They use them as gates to evil, gates to hell, through unnatural acts and things like this, and abuse, MK Ultra. Now, I did some research because I also told you guys that when you're born into this world, you enter through a gate, and that the actual musculature of the uterus through which every child passes is the musculature is shaped in a spiral pattern. We covered that on several shows. It is a twisting spiral pattern in which, when the child passes through the birth canal, they actually are twisted out by the doctor. They have to manually be twisted out, or they're born in a twisting motion through the birth canal. Now, this is fascinating because it confirms that something about this twisting motion is a gate. Remember, for everything God does that is good, the evil one has an evil counterpart, a knockoff, a protege. And so, just because a spiral is something evil to the elite and the evil one, it can be also the narrow gate back to heaven as well. And of course, the gate of birth into this world, into this time prison. Now, I've heard some other channels starting to talk about the time prison, and that's really good because we want to get the word out. We've talked a lot about the time prison on this channel for many years. We're locked in time. We're locked in the sine wave that goes up and down and around. Sine is sin. We are locked in sin. Children are born into sin. We're born into the sine wave through the spiral. And look at this. The umbilical cord is also a helical spiral. Now, when I discovered this the other day when I was putting together my show notes for this show, I was befuddled and speechless. Because everything that we're finding just keeps getting confirmed over and over and over again. This is the human umbilical cord, and it spirals into the child. Here's some other images of it here. The human umbilical cord is a helical spiral. Here's a diagram of it here. Now you'll see here, these are arteries and a vein, right? You have two umbilical arteries and you have one umbilical vein. You also have this space filled with a substance called Wharton's jelly. And Wharton's jelly is only found in one other place in the human body, and that is inside the inner eye. So what you have is another nested reality above and below, just like the sands are comparable to the galaxies. We have the eyeball of a human being comparable to the womb of the woman, with an exit which becomes the iris, the cervix, umbilical cord which becomes the hyaloid canal or the hyaloid artery in the inner eye that connects the lens to the retina. You have the retina, which then becomes the placenta. There's this nested reality of comparing the inner eye to the womb. You have the inverted child in the womb hanging upside down, and you have the image that comes into your eye that is inverted as well. And there are many, many, many more comparisons between the eye and the womb that are undeniable at this point. We call this the body code. The discovery that nested realities are what uncover the truth about the Most High and His creation. It proves who the one and only true God is. So now we know that these spirals represent gates. And we know that the human umbilical cord is a helical spiral, bringing us through the gate into the time prison. And that brings us to another very important truth. That again, this is something that I just discovered a few days ago. I'm going to present it to you, and then you get to decide what it all means. But I believe we've stumbled onto a very deep truth that helps you understand the world we live in. These are column basalt structures. Let's blow this up. This is called the Giant's Causeway. This is in Europe. And what we're told is that these column basalt structures around the world were naturally formed volcanically. But I believe there's something different going on here. Let me do a little demonstration and show you what I'm talking about. Look at the structure of this. There's your spiral arm. There is your spiral arm. There is your spiral shape. This one twisting up here and around. Do you see the twisting motion of many of these column basalt structures around the world? Now, I had noticed this before, and we've talked a lot about these column basalt structures, but this is amazing. They twist and they turn. And if you were to extrapolate this twisting motion out into the heavens, as if this was the base of a stump of a tree, you would realize what you're looking at. This repeated twisting motion of all these column basalt structures, tightly packed hexagonal shapes, perfect hexagonal shapes, tightly bundled and packed into these majestic remnants of what I believe were trees, gates to the heavens, linking up heaven to earth. These, I believe, were tree stumps. Now, follow me with this. There's your spiral motion over and over again. It's pretty undeniable when you really look at these column basalt structures that these are perfect hexagonal shapes spiraling up to the heavens. It's pretty obvious. And if you extrapolate this out, you can see that it is quite possible that these trees connected to the very galaxies. In other words, what if these were cut off, which is what the book of Enoch says could have happened. It says that the angels labored at the trees. This is in Enoch 66. The angels labored at the trees. These are the words that were used in the book of Enoch to describe an event that happened surrounding all the trees of earth. And that after they labored at the trees, this was right around the time of the flood, that God had to miraculously reseed the earth with different kinds of trees because the angels had labored at the trees and cut them all down. And maybe when they cut them here, the other half of the tree stump are the galaxies that you're seeing in the sky that once connected heaven to earth before the fall of man. Column basalt are galaxies, which are umbilical cords, which are birth canals, which are seashells. And that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. Now, you have to decide what all this means. I'm presenting you the information, the nested realities, the microcosms and the macrocosms of the things that I've noticed that have been gifted to me to see. But of course, the rest is up to you.
Enter the stars. And what you're looking at are all of the column basalt structures around the world. How can it be that the centers of the stalks of plants look just like the cross sections of these basalt structures around the world? How can this be? How can it be that this looks like this? And how can it be that in the book of Job, Job talks about a tree as a mountain erodes and crumbles, and as a rock is moved from its place, as water wears away the stones, and torrents wash away the soil, so you destroy a person's hope. And is talking to God about what he had just gone through. Talking about the edges of the stalk being washed away, the edges of a tree. But just before he says this, Job talks about something very bizarre. Let's read Job's words. Mortals born of woman are of few days and full of trouble. They spring up like flowers and wither away like fleeting shadows. They do not endure. So he is talking about birth into the world of sin. Do you fix your eye on them? We're talking about the hyaloid canal. Fixing his eye, the stalk of the tree, the stumps of the tree reaching back to heaven. Later in this passage, this is the hyaloid canal, connecting you to earth, born into sin, born through the womb, through the aperture, through the iris, through the cervix, dilating you into this reality. This is the womb that Job was talking about. And you're not going to hear the truth anywhere else because the traditions of men have hidden the truth from you. They want you locked into the mindless kindergarten version of these stories, never digging deeper to find the truth. And I believe that Job was talking about exactly this. And as I read through this, you will begin to see the truth, and your eyes will open as Job continues on. Will you bring them before you for judgment? Can we bring what is pure from the impure? Can we bring what is pure from the impure? No, we cannot, because you are born into sin. A person's days are determined. You have decreed the number of his months and have set limits he cannot exceed. That is everything we've been talking about on this channel. Born into this reality on a certain date, leaving this reality on a certain date. And Job talks all about it as he explains the eye, and he explains being born from the eye. It's all here, you guys. So look away from him and let him alone till he has put in his time like a hired laborer. Time is sin. Sine, the sine wave, measures time. At least there is hope for a tree. Then he starts talking about the tree. If it is cut down, it will sprout again. He's talking about the stumps of the trees. And its new shoots will not fail. Its roots may grow old in the ground, growing old in the ground. The stumps of trees growing old in the ground. And its new shoots will not fail. Its roots may grow old in the ground, and its stump die in the soil. Yet at the scent of water, it will bud and put forth shoots like a plant. The water of the vitreous humor, the waters of heaven, the well that never runs dry, the cerebrospinal fluid, the goal. Only one way to the cerebrospinal fluid of the brain and spine, and that is through the sun, the crossing of the optic nerves, the cross, Jesus Christ, at the pineal position between the two thieves, the eyes of good and evil. And I'm done arguing with people about this. This is the truth. Jesus had to die on the cross. Why? Because he was playing out the will of his Father, so that one day we could open the books and have the knowledge to understand that he was playing out the very creation of mankind, our anatomy, so that there would be proof of God and proof of his Son. And this is why he told Peter to get behind me, Satan, because Peter did not want Jesus to carry out his destiny. And now you know the truth. And this is mind-shattering. So Job talks all about everything that we've been talking about. And I believe that he, in fact, was talking about all of this. You see, my offenses will be sealed up in a bag. You will cover over my sin. Is the bag like the placenta surrounding the child? Is the bag this placenta? Child in the womb upside down with its head on the cervix, a crown. Vision comes in upside down, just like the upside down child. It's inverted, born into sin upside down because sin is bad. And we go in right side up through the hyaloid artery. This is it here. This begins to disappear after 40 days. It begins to disappear, just like the 40 weeks in the womb. It's all there, you guys, perfectly laid out for us in our anatomy. Now let's continue on with this. And I'm glad we got Job covered, because I was going to do that a different day. Here's another film, upside down. We're going to cover that. I'm probably going to decode this film. Someone sent this to me. Thank you for sending that to me. You guys, this has me so intrigued. And I'm going to show you something that is going to blow you away. These are all the places, or most of them, I've mapped out everything but most of Europe. There may be more patterns in Europe, but I did Africa, I did India, I did Malaysia, I didn't do all of Australia yet. I did not do South America. There's many in South America, but I did North America and Canada. They are complete. Now, in a previous program, we tried to look at the coal deposits of, next to these stumps. Again, these are all of the stumps of columnar basalt around the world. Mapped them all out. I did a little volcano anagram here, or symbol, because that's kind of a joke, because were they really made from volcanoes, or were they growing living things? As we just showed you, the centers of stalks of plants look just like these things. How do two completely different processes manifest in exactly the same way? They don't, because they're the same process. It's a growth process. The outside's been stripped away. Now, we looked at coal deposits. My problem with the coal deposits are there are many different maps showing coal deposits. So it's hard to just choose one and try to see how it relates to these stumps. Okay? I can tell you what the Bible says.
it says in the Garden of Eden, there were many trees in the garden. Are these the many trees that were in the garden? And then it also says that there was one tree in the center of the garden. Was this the one tree in the center of the garden, the tree of life that goes back up to heaven? Here's my other question. Why are many of these stumps or these basalt structures named after devils and demons? Why? Why is there the devil's postpile in Mammoth? Why is there the Giant's Causeway in Ireland? Many of these names are actually in other languages. And that's some research some of you can do. I'm going to pop this in the chat here, and I'm going to give you, many of you speak different languages. Some of you are from Greece. Some of you maybe speak Japanese. And I just, give this to you so that you can look at some of these names that are in other languages and see if they also mean giants or demons. Now, what would be the purpose of the devil naming all of these places after demons and devils and giants? Well, because that's what the devil does. He's a counterfeiter. He tries to overlay his story onto God. Now, we just showed you guys in the last hangout how Jacob's ladder was probably describing one of these stumps going up to heaven, or it could have been the very tree of life itself. We are cut off from that tree because we are in sin right now. The tree will reconnect heaven and earth together eventually on Jesus' return. We have the Devil's Tower, of course, all named, or many of them named after giants, named after, here's the column of the giants here, all across the world, across different cultures and languages, yet many of them have the same names of giants. This one's called Sheep Eater. That's interesting. I guess a giant could eat a sheep. This goes on. There's more. It's not just some, it's many. Here's the gray dragon's tongue. Okay. Why? Why are they naming these things after? We're here to find out. We don't trust what we're told in school. We don't trust what we're told by our pastors. We have to find for ourselves. Seek the truth for ourselves. Here's the Devil's Woodpile, Canada. Here's Thunderstruck Rock. Around the world, across different cultures and languages. Why is there this common theme? Here's Samson's ribs. The ribs of a giant. Was Samson a giant? I don't know. I wasn't there. But why would they call these giant ribs? Maybe because they're made out of rock? Who knows? So here we are, you guys. All of these basalt columns around the world. And it seems as though when we apply Bible scriptures, hidden Bible gems that no one ever knew what they meant, when now all of a sudden we start applying this concept, it fits. And we're going to share another one with you guys today. And that is in Israel, north of the Sea of Galilee. And this is mind-shattering because there are hexagons in Israel, northeast of the Sea of Galilee. Let's back this out so you can see this. This is fascinating because a miracle took place at this location. It was one of the only miracles that seems to link the basalt columns of Israel. This is Bethsaida. This is the Sea of Galilee. Now, there were more miracles in this area. There were more miracles in this area of Bethsaida. But let's take a look at these column basalts of Israel. Let's take a look here. Let's, where is that at? Hexagon pool, it's called in Israel. And you can't zoom in on it, but hexagon pool, Israel. Look at this. This is fascinating, because the first thing I checked once we made this discovery about these hexagon stumps around the planet, the first thing that I checked was if there were any in Israel, and if any Bible verses seemed to overlay any kind of miracles that were happening. Here's hexagon pool. I mean, look at these fascinating photos, you guys. Now, this falls in line with what Job was saying. Job was talking about water rushing through and wearing away the tree. Remember this? This is fascinating. Look at this thing. These are the rods and cones and the grape structure we talked about on previous videos. If any of you are confused, you got to go back 4 or 5 videos, watch them all the way through. You will see that this structure looks like the rods and cones with the grapes on top. We'll just do a quick side-by-side for those who are feeling a little lost right now. Rods and cones, microscope. Can't spell today. Sorry guys, it's been a weird week for me. Trying to stay focused. Here are the rods and cones. Look at this, you guys. This is the same thing. Let's take a look. Here's another really good image of them. Take this image, you turn it upside down, and you have the same thing. Now, what is this? As I've been telling you guys, and everyone keeps calling me crazy, God laid out the truth about the nature of our reality in our anatomy, in our eye. This is the earth. Now, for those of you that aren't sitting down, you might want to sit down, because Jesus compared sin to leavening in bread. And many of you know that when you fit the continents together, they fit together like a puzzle, and that the original shape of the earth was all the continents smashed together. All the continents fit together like a puzzle piece. They were all smashed together like Pangea. It was called Pangea. It all fits together like a puzzle. Well, what happened? The cup filled up with sin. The cup of earth, the upside down cup of earth, filled with sin, the leavening, the, what is it called when you add yeast, the yeast. It expanded with all the sin of the world, pushing the continents apart, right? And then that's the cup of sin, filling and filling and filling. And Jesus said, take this cup from me, Father, Abba. Well, he took on the cup. He drank the sin of the world. Now, his cup was the optic nerves crossing. It forms a cup in your anatomy. When you, from the eyes to the optic nerve crossing at the center of the brain, it's a cup. The cup flips over. That's take the cup, give it to the Father. The optic pathway then reemerges from the crossing, fans outward much more brilliantly. These are the mansions, this Father's mansion with many rooms. Goes to the back of the brain. It's all a map. Doesn't mean it's real. It's a map. It's like plans of an architect laying out on the table. You're not looking at the actual house. You're looking at the plans of the architect. Now, Our original bodies were very different than the bodies we have now. When sin entered into the world, Eve's eyes were open. Now, this is just strictly me going on the Holy Spirit. I don't know this to be true. You must pray to the Holy Spirit to see if this is resonating with you. If it is not, do not accept it, but always let the Holy Spirit lead you into truth. Sin entered the world. Eve's eyes were opened. She was looking out instead of looking in. And at that point, she was deceived. God then had to give us skins. These weren't animal skins. These were flesh suits. Our bodies changed. But in that change, he encoded the plan of salvation. The plan of salvation encoded right into our flesh suit, our skins. What is that plan of salvation? The cross. The eyes, the internal eye structure was then developed. He gave us physical eyes, and we went into a material realm, more of a material realm where it was tactile, like a beast realm of living and dying, being born, living, and then dying. The serpent eating its tail, the dust eating its tail. God cursed the serpent, cursed the dust, right? It's all making sense. And then, but God encoded the plan of salvation. This is why Jesus had to die, because he had to do it on a cross. He had to do it exactly the way he did it. He was following instructions from his Father so that we could link all this back to him and know he is the Savior. We could link all this back to him and know that he is the Savior. He was crucified between two thieves, the eyes of good and evil. This is why the Illuminati cover one eye. It's a big joke. They know this, but you don't. And I'm here to show it to you. They know about the thieves and the eyes. That's why they cover one eye. Now, Jesus did a miracle. It's only in one of the three Gospels. They came to Bethsaida. Where's Bethsaida? Let's see here. Here's Bethsaida. Let's take a look here. Oops. It was at the end of Jesus' journey. Jesus journeyed from Nazareth to the Sea of Galilee. He went from Nazareth to Cana, to Tiberias, to Magdala, to Capernaum, and to Bethsaida. And it just so happens that at his last stop, he showed up to the hexagon pools of Israel. And when I saw this and I found this, it simply gave me chills. This is the exact area. People get on me about being you're going to suffer the worst judgment. You know what? If it's going to help people come to Christ, and if I get it wrong and God deems me unworthy, at least I went down helping other people find salvation. The enemy's out there. He's got a gauntlet of things to try to take us off track. I think it's pretty amazing that out of the thousands of pieces of information, tens of thousands of pieces of information that you guys have sent me over the last 4 years, that we really haven't gotten it wrong yet, have we? That's pretty amazing. That's a miracle. Because the enemy's out there trying to feed us information, right? You know that. But the Holy Spirit leads me in all truth. And this is the place where Jesus performed the miracle, a very peculiar miracle. And we're going to read about this as we look at this side by side. And we also understand that these highlands was the very location at which a miracle occurred. Let's take a look at this miracle. And I want you to think about that side by side I just showed you as I'm reading this to you. They came to Bethsaida, and some people brought a blind man. A blind man. And begged Jesus to touch him.
He took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. He led him outside the village. Oops. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go here. They were at Bethsaida. He led him outside the village. See this? Now, for those of you that might be skeptical at this point, I got news for you. This is the Holy Land. There are no other hexagonal features throughout this entire area. The only one listed for Israel is, or anywhere in this region, is the hexagonal pools at Bethsaida, which is just exactly where Jesus performed this miracle. There's nothing even around here. There's no biblical cities. Bethsaida sits alone. It's right here. There's no other biblical cities around this. I'm just trying to put this in context for you before I continue. When he had spit on the man's eyes and put his hands on him, Jesus asked, "Do you see anything? Do you see anything?" He looked up and said, "I see people. They look like trees walking around." The tree stumps of the hexagon pool in Israel. Is this where Jesus performed this miracle? And was he talking about the Alice in Wonderland syndrome? This one being in reverse, right? Because people didn't look like grasshoppers to this man. They looked like trees. They looked huge. Now, some of you came in the chat the other day when we were talking about this Alice in Wonderland syndrome, and some of you said, yeah, but I get the opposite, where everything looks really huge. Well, maybe it goes both ways, you guys. Instead of micropsia, when the melatonin hits your parietal lobe and you're falling asleep and everything, your depth perception shifts. Instead of micropsia, where everything looks really small, maybe everything looks really big. Let's research that real quick. I don't know the answer to this. Everything looks big. Condition. Okay, so there you go. Macropsia instead of micropsia. So we were right. So now we have two instances in the Bible where macropsia, here it is here. We have two instances in the Bible. One in the land of milk and honey, Canaan, where we looked at each other and we saw each other as grasshoppers. That's an Alice in Wonderland syndrome. And we have another instance now where everything looked like trees. Everything looked huge. And they were at a tree stump coming out of the earth. The columnar basalt of Israel. Excuse me. Let's read about this. Macropsia is a neurological condition affecting human visual perception. Remember, your visual perception occurs at the parietal lobe at the back of your brain. There are receptors, melatonin receptors inside your parietal lobe. For some of us, when the melatonin hits those receptors, we have experienced these episodes early on in our life where everything changes, our depth perception changes, in which objects within an affected section of the visual field appear larger than normal, causing a person to feel smaller than they actually are. Macropsia, along with its opposite condition, micropsia, can be categorized under dysmetropsia. I think I was born to do this because I, as you know, was in the medical field. We had to learn how to pronounce these words. See how God works? It's pretty amazing. I had no idea I would discover these things, but here they are. God equips us with the tools we need for our gifting. Macropsia is related to other conditions dealing with visual perception, such as anisoconia and Alice in Wonderland syndrome. Macropsia has a wide range of causes, from prescription and illicit drugs to migraines, and rarely complex partial epilepsy, and to different retinal conditions such as epiretinal membrane. I can tell you that none of these things applied to me, and none of these things apply to many of you who had this condition, because you were children and you didn't have illicit drugs. Many of you did not have migraines or epilepsy, retinal conditions. I have perfect 20/20 visions. I do have some floaters, which is kind of interesting too, because the floaters are the remnant of your hyaloid artery after it atrophied in your eye before birth, starting at 40 days. Remnants floating around in your vitreous humor. That's what floaters are, or can be. There's other things that can cause floaters as well, but this is what it can be. And they don't talk about that because they're trying to pull you off the game, right? But we're smarter than that. We're going to figure this out. Person with macropsia may have no psychiatric conditions. Okay, good. Symptoms caused chemically by drugs, such as cannabis, magic mushrooms, or cocaine, tend to dissipate after the chemical compound has been excreted from the body. You see. But you can experience this without any of these things, which is what happened to me, because I don't do any of those things. You guys, this is fascinating stuff. I'm shocked that more people don't want to understand these things and how it relates to the Bible. We finally have explanations for what the Bible is talking about. All right. I see Lee Stewie in the house. I see Gina. Phoenix. Need some new faces. Lone Star Medic. All right. Let's keep looking at this, you guys. Let's refresh this. All right, let's continue on this verse. That thing's like stuck. Oh, I see. It's good now. I think we're good now. Uh-oh, do we get knocked off? All right, let's continue on with this, you guys. What else happened with Jesus? He said, did you see anything? He looked up and said, I see people. They look like trees walking around, not tree trunks. Once more, Jesus put his hands on the man's eyes. Then his eyes were open. His sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. Jesus sent him home saying, don't even go into the village. Why would he tell him not to go into the village? I'm a little confused about that part, but it's got to relate back into the hexagon pool. Remember, this is the eye. These are the rods and cones. So in all this that Jesus is talking about the eyes and healing the eyes, spitting in his hands, that's pretty amazing. Now, done there, done here. Let's close some of these up. Blind man of Bethsaida. Let's read what Wikipedia has to say about this. The blind man of Bethsaida is a subject of one of the miracles of Jesus in the Gospels. It is found only in Mark 8:22-26, which is what we just read. The exact location of Bethsaida in this pericope, is subject to debate among scholars, but is likely Bethsaida Julius on the north shore of Lake Galilee, which is what we just covered. According to the Gospel of Mark, when Jesus came to Bethsaida, a town in Galilee, he was asked to heal a blind man. Jesus took his patient out of town, put some spittle on his eyes, and laid hands on him. I see men like trees walking, said the man. Jesus repeated the procedure, resulting in clear and perfect eyesight. Neither go into the town, commanded Jesus, nor tell anyone in the town. Don't you think it's interesting that the retina of your eye looks like a tree? The retina of your eye looks like the tree limbs. This is the tree trunk, the conduit to heaven. We've been cut off, but as you know, there's only one way to the Father. Let's continue reading this. Neither go into the town, commanded Jesus, nor tell anyone. Even though the story is found only in Mark, it is strongly supported by the criterion of embarrassment, whatever that is, since early Christians would not have been happy that Jesus had to give two blessings to achieve a proper result. Well, now we know why Jesus' miracle seemed to fail. He was trying to tell us something. He wanted the man to see people as trees, so that those of us with eyes to see in the last day would connect the dots and understand what this miracle was all about. Helping bring more to Christ through the miracle of the inner anatomy of our bodies, so that there would be no question. The increase in knowledge in the last days, the faith of all of us.
Ist ja schon fertig. Oh. Oh, schon fertig. Das geht noch gar
The
nicht.
sixth angel sounded his trumpet.
Und jetzt? Was machen wir jetzt? Wie viel sind wir da noch? 54. Ja, also, das ist so mal die Perspektive mit diesen Wir sind Bäume. Ich denke mal, war sehr interessant. Habt ihr noch was dazu zu sagen? Vorhin kam so die Beschwerde, blöder Untertitel von bla bla bla. Ich meine, man kann es hier nicht jedem recht machen, sag ich mal so. Ich persönlich, mir ist es doch egal. Der Inhalt kommt ja schon rüber und er spricht zumindest nur so langsam, dass der Untertitel wenigstens mal hinterherkommt. Ne? Also, ich sehe da überhaupt keine Probleme. Und wenn man sich richtig frequenziell einstellt, dann denke ich, hat man schon noch weniger Probleme. Ich weiß, viele oder einige sind im Englischen auch nicht so fit. Ich könnte jetzt hier auch russische Videos reinmachen, hätte ich auch kein Problem damit und gucke mir die auf Russisch an. Wenn wir schon beim Thema sind, ne? Ich habe auch einen guten italienischen Kanal. Der ist auch sehr interessant. Der die Schlammflut und so weiter halt auf Italienisch. Ja, und der Untertitel ist wirklich grauenhaft. Aber man versteht, worum es geht. Und das ist, denke ich, immer noch entscheidend, weil so recherchieren wir ja auch. Ne? Ich denke, das ist keine Barriere oder sowas. Ne? Gut, ich denke, es war heute viel Stoff wieder. Ich hoffe, es hat euch trotzdem gefallen, auch wenn es vielleicht zwischendrin ein bisschen für den einen oder anderen langweilig wurde. Aber das Wichtigste war so der Anknüpfungsteil von gestern dabei oder vorgestern. Gestern haben wir Metatron genommen und den Cube. Ja, ich habe gedacht, wir machen das nochmal hier mit ihm, mit Case. Ja, mal gucken. Ich habe mit ihm, wie gesagt, Kontakt aufgenommen. Mal schauen. Ich werde wirklich mal das Wichtigste herausnehmen. rausschneiden, werde das übersetzen und dann werden wir das in Deutsch einsprechen, dass wir so ein schönes gepacktes Video daraus basteln. Die Genehmigung, wie gesagt, habe ich schon. Und ja, dann haben wir für alle Deutschsprachigen hier nochmal ein schönes Konzept, so wie bei der Offenlegung. Das hat ja auch ganz gut funktioniert. Na? Gut. Ich hoffe, ja, haben wir irgendwas vergessen? Warte mal, ich kann euch hier nochmal kurz was zeigen, weil wir eh gerade beim Thema sind. Zack. Mache ich mal ein bisschen größer. Nee, ich will das hier. Hallo. So. Hier, ne? Nochmal so ein bisschen Bäume. War das jetzt von Anfang an? Ja, Tree of Life, wie er schon gesagt hat. Das mit den Giants. Das mit den Riesen. Ja gut, hier sehen wir ja, dass sie früher, also alles vegetarisch, vegan, Rohkost. Und heute essen wir das hier. Findet natürlich eine, ja, ich sag mal, DNA-Veränderung statt. Und so weiter. Das hatte ich eben auch gezeigt. Hier auch nochmal. Das sind eigentlich ganz bekannte Bilder. Ja, Wasser, 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 Wasser. Ja, das haben wir schon gesehen. Gibt es was Neues aus der Gruppe? Lass uns mal gucken. Hier die ägyptische Statue von einer Prinzessin Takusit. Ihr seht, ich sammle immer ganz verschiedene Sachen hier. Und hier kommt auch wieder die Bibel vor. Also ihr seht, das ist immer wieder präsent, wo das Ganze aufgeschlüsselt werden kann. Ich mache das mal größer. Na, Blume des Lebens hier, sollte ja jeder kennen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Haben wir wieder die goldene Zahl. Na? Also wenn Bodycode euch erinnert, da oder Metatron, was immer wieder kommt das alles vor. Beispiel. Was haben wir hier noch? Ja, hier Devilstower. Übrigens, kennt ihr auch noch diesen Film Krieg der Städte, heißt der, glaube ich. Meine ich mich zu erinnern. Ganz interessant. Krieg der Städte. Sollte man sich mal anschauen. Das habe ich euch vorhin, glaube ich, gezeigt, oder? Habe ich euch das gezeigt? Habe ich gezeigt? Britta, nee, habe ich heute noch nicht gezeigt. Heute haben wir das andere Video ja geguckt. Wir schauen. Ist immer Stück für Stück. Aber ich habe es nicht vergessen. Dürfte jeder kennen. Ich habe noch einen interessanten Post von der Carmen erhalten, vom Admin von uns im Telegram. Sie arbeitet gerade an einem Projekt, was komplett mit dem, was der Case sozusagen hier präsentiert, zu tun. Und das aber bezogen auf Deutschland. Und ich warte jetzt noch. Ich kann zwar schon Sachen posten, aber da ist noch einiges an Aufarbeitung dabei. Ich werde das aber jetzt mal dann hinzufügen. Melted Bricks, das habe ich euch, glaube ich, auch erzählt hier, weil ich das gerade sehe. Ripple-Effekt ist auch eine super tolle Frau, die sich da mit vielen Facetten von Tartaria-Themen beschäftigt. Hier Tartaria in Afghanistan. Erinnert ihr euch an das Video Vedun, Vedun? Was für ein Video hattest du gemacht? Das letzte mit den Statuen, mit den Buddha-Statuen in Afghanistan. War recht cool hier, warte mal. Komm, wir machen das mal kurz an. Ja, natürlich. Das Video kannst du dir jederzeit angucken, Gary. In der Rubrik Livestream müsste das drin sein. Also unsere Playlist Livestream. Interessant, ne? Discord ist heute ruhig. Ich kann euch das ja verlinken, wenn ihr wollt. Im Chat, warte mal, hier. Kopieren. Warte mal. Hier, ich füge euch das mal hier ein im Chat. Da könnt ihr gucken. Wenn ihr Lust habt. Und was haben wir noch? Ah, hier seht ihr mal wieder die Babuschka. Ja. Diese russischen. Das ist das, wo er auch was erzählt hat, ne? Alles überlagert sich. Sonne, Mond, Plus, Minus. Schwarze Sonne. Nordstern. Nordpol. Das dürfte ja jeder kennen aus dem Video. Friedrich, ja. Warte mal, kann ich das hier irgendwie... Ja, im Chat ist ein Link. Das Video kenne ich auch, ja. Es gibt keine Wälder. So, hier nochmal das Prinzip. Das ist alles Reflexion. So sagen die das, ne? Also die schwarze Sonne, das wird dann hier oben reflektiert. Mit der Sonne, mit dem Mond. Wir leben in einem elektrischen Universum. Da, der Baum des Lebens. Ah, hier die Karten und so. Das kennt ihr ja auch, nehme ich mal an, ne? Da. Wie gesagt, das hier ist auch interessant mit diesem Prisma. Mit dem Regenbogen hinterher. Deswegen, das mit dem Auge ist ja nicht ganz so uninteressant, finde ich, ne? Mit der Linse und so weiter. Was wäre eine Version für mich? So, haben wir noch irgendwas Interessantes hier heute? Ah, das Thema hier würde ich ja auch gern noch irgendwann mal einbauen. Mit diesen Kanonen. Ja. Ach Gott, sind das große Bilder. Ja, das ist doch mal was. Das dürfte ein interessantes Thema auch werden. Wie gesagt, das hier mit den Kanonen. Ah, hier, die ist auch klasse. Ist sie das? Ich muss mal gucken, ob die das ist. Oh, schau an. Na, das ist ja interessant. Da haben wir es wieder, ne? Ist das nicht toll? Aber... Ah, hier sehen wir nochmal was mit Bäume. Versteinert. Pflanzen. Unglaublich, ne? Und man hat ja auch wirklich, es gibt Leute oder Wissenschaftler, ich sag jetzt mal Wissenschaftler, die haben wirklich da mal geprüft, ob da organisches Material hinterlegt ist. Und ja, es ist so. So, das ist ja auch eine interessante Theorie mit der Erde. Ich mach das mal kurz an hier. Warte mal, kann man das nicht größer machen? Hallo? Los geht's nicht hier. Was ist los? Keine Funktion. Ja, das kann jetzt nicht sein. Ah ja, jetzt geht's.
G'day guys. I had to do my own video of this because that other dude that's pushing it around, he has had 7 years at least, if not 9, that I know of, to get off the circle, the disc, the lie, and he hasn't. So he uses truth to entice people in to his lies and keep people in that circus. So I had to do my own because, yeah, he 7 years at least, you know, and he's still, and I've shown him shitloads of evidence, but he doesn't want to hear it. He just wants that circle, no matter what. So I had to do my own video here, all right? The Big Bang. Tell you what, it makes sense because this is what we're in. We're inside a molten metal sphere. Well, maybe not so much molten. So let's see. Hydro explosive. Boom. You've got yourself a sphere. I think that's bloody, you know, it's pretty amazing stuff. So I'll try this other one. Over here. Gotta go back. Where are you? Not that one. There's another one that I would like. Here it is. Let's see if we can get one here. Pull that one up. I'll do it again, and I'll keep it going. Explosive hydroforming, water. Isn't it funny how it's mentioned also in the Big Bang that there was water? Interesting. Right?
Wow. Das werde ich mir nochmal hier übersetzen in Ruhe. Und da können wir das auch mal in einem Stream mal hier mit einbauen. Weil er sieht das Ganze nochmal ein bisschen anders da. Auf jeden Fall erkennt man hier auch diese Wabenform. Ja, und Quadratform. Das ist so seine Theorie. Also man sieht, es gibt schon verschiedene Ansichten zu diesem ganzen Thema. Ja, das mal zu dem. Also er schreibt hier, wir leben im Inneren der Erde auf einer quadratischen, flachen Ebene. Hier geht es nur um die äußere Hülle. Es gab einen Urknall, aber es war nicht die Erschaffung des Universums, wie sie es beschreiben. Der Urknall war der explosive Moment, in dem die Erde in eine Sphäre verwandelte. Dieser Prozess hat einen sehr lauten Knall verursacht. Für alle praktischen Zwecke ist die Erde unser Universum. Also war dieser große Knall der Anfang davon. Die Geschichten, die sie erzählen, erhalten immer ein bisschen Wahrheit. da steckt offensichtlich viel mehr dahinter, denn die Erde ist viel mehr als nur eine Stahlkugel. Theorien über Theorien über Theorien über Theorien. Ich muss gucken. Decoded the Matrix, ja. Der Kanal ist auch echt super. Hier unten, Decoded the Matrix. Sie schlüsselt sehr viel über Gematria auf. Ich glaube, das würde jetzt den Zeitrahmen sprengen. Da zeigt sie das Video. Warte mal. Irgendwo hat sie das, oder? Redet sie da nicht? Doch, hier. Warte mal kurz, ich mache mal kurz hier so. Ich tue mal ganz kurz anspielen, wenn ihr Lust habt. Habt ihr Lust? Ganz kurz noch.
Sleeping satellite is related to the god of sleep. I speak about the satellite in my video about the Matrix game of life. If you haven't watched it yet, I would suggest that you do to understand deeply what the satellite is. And also, Saturn is both a satellite and an urn. Sat-urn. Sleeping satellite is 190 in English ordinal, matching the atomic mass of osmium that represents Oz, the Wizard of Oz. The sleeping satellite is 76 in Chaldean, that is the number of osmium. Sleeping satellite is 62 in Chaldean, matching element samarium, and samarium is interesting because SM could be Super Mario, and Super Mario represents magnetism. It's also linked to Sam, that is 314, that is pi, and Uncle Sam, that is a big matrix code. With 62 in Chaldean, we have the following expressions. The god of dreams. So here we have the confirmation that the sleeping satellite is the god of sleep, or the god of dreams. Then we have magnetism, electricity, that are the two forces that creates this plane through a cyclotron. Then the architect's matrix. What is reincarnation? A primitive archaic game. Low pitch sound. So the satellite emits orange frequencies and uses a low pitch frequency. That is low pitch sound. Archon mind parasite. The spiral trajectory. So this is also linked to the cyclotron. Reptilian takeover, and monarch butterfly. This is linked to the mind control, and this satellite is used to control our minds.
Also, sie schlüsselt alles mit Gematria auf, ja. Und in dem Video sind halt, oder in allen Sachen, wie wir das auch vorhin hier gesehen haben, in den Filmen sind Symboliken und so weiter hinterlegt. Und du kannst es dann sozusagen ja aufschlüsseln. Und es führt dann immer zu Verbindungen. So wie gesagt hat, Wizard von Oz, wie heißt der Film? Mit Oz. Der Film mit Oz, wie heißt der Film? Da mit dem Löwe, Vogelscheuche, mit dem Mädchen da, wo zum Smaragdschloss da laufen muss. Helft mir mal einer. Auf jeden Fall tut sie das hier komplett aufschlüsseln. Und mit diesem Schlüssel kann man dann sehen, was für eine Verbindung ist damit gemeint. Unter anderem, ja. Magnetische Elektrizität, der Architekt der Matrix, die Reptilianer übernehmen. Was ist mit Satellit gemeint? Der Satellit ist nichts anderes wie der Saturn, der Zauberer von Oz. Danke. Dankeschön. Und das kann man hier sozusagen entschlüsseln. Das heißt, das, was die hier uns erzählen, ist ja eine Verschönerung. Und was ist da hinten dran versteckt in der ganzen Aufschlüsselungsgeschichte? Wie gesagt, sie hat echt super geniale Videos. Ich bin immer wieder drinne und schaue mir die Entschlüsselungen an. Und hier kommst du wieder auf die Filme zurück. Hier, der Zauberer von Oz. Ja, hier decodet die Chromosomen, sind hier enkodiert worden. Oder, was haben wir hier? The God of Sleep, ja, der Gott des Schlafes, ja, hat sie hier in Matrix von der Trilogie decoded, also entschlüsselt. Hier, Alice im Wunderland hat sie 2 Videos gemacht, also 3 sogar. Lohnt sich wirklich mal anzuschauen und sich auch mit der Gematria zu beschäftigen. Das ist sehr, sehr wichtig, unter anderem, weil die Matrix ist auch ein binärer Code enthalten, ja, oder Zahlen. Alles basiert auf Zahlen und Zahlen sind Wörter. Ja, ist alles verschlüsselt. Ich zeige euch das jetzt hier nicht, das würde den Zeitrahmen, wie gesagt, sprengen. Könnte ich gerne mal extra mal machen und mal hier so mal daraus was zeigen. Im deutschsprachigen Raum gibt es da nicht so viele, also mir jetzt nicht bekannt, weil das meiste halt auf diese englische spezielle Sprache, englisch kreierte Sprache basiert. Und da ist sozusagen der Schlüssel enthalten. Ja? Wie ihr seht, Decode the Matrix, wer kein Englisch kann, macht nichts. In der Regel hat sie auch deutsche Untertitel da, also mit Übersetzung gemacht. Lohnt sich, es lohnt sich und man versteht sehr viel. Man versteht dann einiges und man sieht sich dann bestimmte Dinge im Fernsehen wirklich aus einem anderen Blickwinkel an. Ist mir wichtig, euch das mitzuteilen. Und ihr werdet immer wieder merken, der Saturn, der Mond, der Würfel, ihr werdet immer wieder damit konfrontiert. Immer und immer und immer wieder. Hier siehst du den Würfel. Na, hier ist der Würfel. Da, der Würfel. Egal wo du hinguckst, du hast immer den Würfel vor den Augen. Deswegen auch the eye, also das Auge. Es ist alles vor unseren Augen. Das habe ich euch, glaube ich, auch schon gezeigt hier alles, ne? Bibel. Ah, hier. Welche vor 170 Jahren in Spanien am Himmel sehen. Also am Himmel. Ah ja. Vor 170 Jahren hat man in Spanien 2 Sonnen gesehen. Ihr kennt das Phänomen, habt ihr bestimmt schon gehört. Ne, um 1536, wenn ich das hier richtig entziffer. So kommt 1706 genommen. Okay. Da, Schwert. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ah ja, guck mal, die 2 Schwerter. Da hat er doch vorhin auch gesprochen über die 2 Schwerter. Erinnert ihr euch? Mhm. Hier wieder Sonne, Mond. Na? Sonne, Mond. Was hat er auf dem Ding? Ah ja. Der zweiköpfige Adler. Da. Mega interessant, was man so alles findet. Hier wieder geschmolzene Burg. Ist es von der Gruppe Orte näher in Tschechien? Ah ja. Was haben wir noch? Hier so. Wissenschaftler entdecken eine was? Ich nehme mal stark an, eine Barriere, sie 11.500 Kilometer über der Erde. Ah ja. Sowas. Wusste ich nicht. Jetzt weiß ich es. Dass sich über uns eine Barriere befindet. Sowas. Was haben wir hier noch? Ja, ich muss mal wieder eine Sendung machen mit ein bisschen Netzfunde. Ich glaube, das ist mal wieder überfällig. Ja. Gut. Ich glaube, wir lassen das mal. Hier habt ihr wieder diese Spirale. Ja? Eine männliche und eine weibliche Spirale. Ich habe das vorhin kurz eingeblendet mit der DNA. Da werden wir auch nochmal drauf kommen. Das spielt halt eine ganz wichtige Rolle. Diese Spirale. Das Dollarzeichen. Kennt ihr das Dollarzeichen? Ja, ne? Das Dollarzeichen. Mal hier. Hier die DNA. Ne? Spirale. Da hat doch einer geschrieben, da gibt es eine männliche Seite, eine weibliche Seite. Und daher symbolisiert man auch dieses, hier sieht man das ganz gut. Wenn ich jetzt hier die Maus hinmache, warte mal, kann man das Bild auch größer machen, ne? Das sieht aus wie ein Fischkorpus, Fisch, und hier ist der Schwanz. Kann man das erkennen, was ich meine? Na? Fisch, Schwanz. DNA. Mal Dollarzeichen, warte mal. Dollar. Dollar. Habe ich auch entdeckt. Hat auch jemand hier Dollarzeichen. Ja? Spirale. Und in der Mitte das kann man auch Sinuswelle. Na? Sinuswelle. Und in der Mitte durch. Dasselbe hast du auch. Wie nennt sich das? Wir haben das Apothekerzeichen da. Mit dieser Schlange. Symbol. Da hier. Ja? Sieht aus wie das Dollarzeichen, oder? Oder hier. DNA. Oder die zwei Schlangen. Ja, es gibt eine Schlange, die nach oben geht und eine Schlange, die nach unten geht eigentlich. Symbole über Symbole über Symbole. Hier auch interessant mit den Flügeln. Das erinnert wieder an diesen Skarabäus mit den zwei Flügeln. Was sehen wir hier? Den Cube. No? The Cube. Und hier Cube. Hier X. Cube. Und noch was. Da. Oh, guck mal hier. Ach, ist zu klein. Ja. Aber wie gesagt, da können wir dann nochmal schauen. Das können wir wegmachen. Also wir haben jetzt hier die Codete Matrix. Mindblowing. Hier, den habe ich auch eben gerade in Facebook gefunden. Er ist auch echt klasse Typ. Redet sehr offen über viele Dinge. Lifting the Veil. Hier spricht er über okkulte Geheimnisse und die naturelle Esoterik, Biologie, bla bla bla, Mathematik und so weiter. Also sehr komplex. Hier kommt wieder die Zahl 7 vor, wie ihr seht. Vielleicht können wir das mal Hier habt ihr auch wieder den Korpus, ne? Das Gehirn, Schädeldecke und ihr seht, es wiederholt sich immer wieder, egal was du schaust. Na, hier wieder Feuer, Luft, Wasser, Erde. Hier haben wir wieder das Herz, wo er auch gesprochen hat, der Casey, mit dem Herz, mit der Herzkammern. Ich weiß nicht, also, es ist unglaublich. Du fängst so mit einem Ding an und dann geht's zum nächsten. Und hier seht ihr da wieder das, ne? Warte mal, ich mach mal den Untertitel aus. Hier unten, da seht ihr wieder die Spirale. Und das ist auch hier enthalten. In diesem Kabbala-Diagramm. Ja, ich lese die Kommentare. Entschuldige. Wir stammen aus dem Wasser. Okay. Ja, ist wirklich so. Man fängt mit einem Thema an und du wirst immer wieder drauf stoßen. Das ist ja das, ne? Also, auch die Gebäude, wie du siehst, die Gebäude sind ja auch eher interessant. Die Gebäude sind so aufgebaut wie der Körper, der menschliche Körper. Die Kirchen zumindest mal, also was wir heute Kirchen nennen, ja. Da, ne? Ah, das ist so klein. Ich hätte es gerne ein bisschen größer. Hier siehst du wieder die Frau, wenn sie schwanger ist. Das wiederholt sich immer wieder. Der Heilige Gral, sozusagen. Ne, Quatsch, der ist eigentlich hier oben, aber auch hier unten. Das ist eigentlich alles Wiederholung, oder? Bin ich da falsch? Es ist immer Wiederholung. Und das sieht immer so kompliziert aus, aber im Nachhinein denke ich, ist es gar nicht mehr so kompliziert. Das ist immer der Einstieg und ich bin, wie gesagt, in manchen Dingen auch nicht gleich so fit. Hier Hollow, Whole, Hello, Holy, Hallowed. Es ähnelt dem Halloween von dem Namen Mutter. Das hier ist ja das Ding in Jerusalem. The Black Goo. Was haben wir noch hier? Mal kurz zeigen hier. Schauen wir mal. Na, also es ist das Weibliche sozusagen. Die weibliche Seite wird wieder präsent. Und das wird auch Zeit, dass sich da das wieder anfängt zu korrigieren. Ne? Was haben wir hier? Ja. Da braucht man nicht dazu viel sagen. Hier wieder die heilige Geometrie. Wie gesagt, Xanrop, such dir die Inputs raus und schaff dich dort weiter vor am besten, ja. Ich gebe euch ja so viel Inputs mit, auch an YouTube-Kanälen zum Beispiel. Es lohnt sich wirklich da mal reinzuschauen und du wirst automatisch auf das kommen, was du wissen möchtest. Du ist nur wichtig, sich da frequenziell auch mal ein bisschen einzustellen. Es ist, wenn ich jetzt sage, ich möchte irgendwas über diese heilige Geometrie wissen, sagen wir mal einen bestimmten Aspekt, dann stelle ich mir das einfach schon vor. Und schwuppsdiwupps, du wirst sehen, ruckzuck fliegen die Informationen eigentlich auf dich zu. Du musst gar nicht suchen, die bekommst du automatisch. Ich habe das sehr, sehr oft probiert und getestet und das immer wieder, wenn ich ein Thema mir im Kopf vorstelle, was mich jetzt interessiert, dann beschäftige ich mich gedanklich schon damit und du wirst automatisch, wirst du die Informationen bekommen. Na? Und dann denke ich, kann man das auch verstehen. Und alles gleichzeitig zu verstehen, ja, ich bin da auch der Meinung, das ist nicht einfach. Also das Video scheint auch interessant zu sein. Kann man sich ja mal anschauen. Na? Gut. Ich denke mal, wir belassen es für heute. Ausruhen ist angesagt. Unsere Antenne alias Gehirn braucht mal eine Sendepause. Ich hoffe, es hat euch soweit gefangen. Habt ihr noch irgendwie was zu erwähnen? Ich bin bei euch im Chat. Ich denke nicht. Interessant ist auch das Video hier übrigens, The Battle for Your Soul, was Casey gemacht hat. Er nimmt da wirklich die Geschichte mit Star Wars unter die Lupe. Der hat dann wirklich die Filmszenen aufgeschlüsselt und hat es dann im Vergleich gezogen. Ich habe mir das auch angesehen. Das ist echt mega interessant. Ist auch ein bisschen, ich sag mal, interessanter anzuschauen, ja, wie jetzt das andere. So, YouTube streikt jetzt hier, oder was? Kann man sich auch mal in Ruhe anschauen. Wir zusammen, wenn ihr Lust habt. Ja. Da beschreibt er auch nochmal das im Vergleich mit dem hier, mit dem Auge. Das sind jetzt 1,5 Stunden. Ich glaube, lass mich mal die Uhr checken. Guck mal, ist schon 12:30. Das ist wirklich schon spät. Und ich habe vorhin die Frage bekommen, ob ich nicht arbeite. Ich meine, das ist uninteressant. Hier scheint auch nicht alle arbeiten zu müssen, habe ich das Gefühl. Wer hat wirklich noch Lust im Moment zu arbeiten? Ich glaube, niemand mehr hat Lust zu arbeiten bei dem, was wir hier gerade erleben. Nun gut. Wie gesagt, ich überlege mir was fürs nächste Mal. Livestream. Die verborgene Ordnung der Schöpfung von Axel Glitzke. Danke auf jeden Fall. Warte mal, Axel Glitzke. Ist der auf YouTube, ja? Axel Glitzke. Ah, da ist er doch. Mal gucken, was ihr da so meint. Ah ja, das Gesicht kommt mir bekannt vor. Und was hast du gemeint? Die verborgene Ordnung der Schöpfung. Ja, wir können ja gerne mal von ihm uns da mal was anschauen. Ich schaue mir das mal in Ruhe an. Und dann gucken wir mal. Das hier meinst du, ne? Das neue hier. Vor 2 Wochen. Ich muss gucken. Ich will nur immer ein bisschen aufpassen. Nicht, dass wir da Ärger mit ihm bekommen nachher. Dann werde ich das vielleicht auf Tartaria TV Channel bringen. Also jetzt nicht hier auf dem Hauptchannel. Ich hoffe, ihr habt da auch eure Abos hinterlassen. Dass ihr das mitbekommt. Dass ich dort streame. In Discord und Telegram werde ich das ankündigen. Da schreibe ich ja in der Regel den Titel dazu, was wir machen, ne? Dann kann man sich das dann mit anschauen. Natürlich können wir gerne mal einen deutschen Film uns angucken, ist auch nicht verkehrt. So zur Abwechslung, sonst hier fallen die Ohren noch bei euch alle ab, weil dem ganzen Englisch hier, ne? Ich kann auch ganz frech sein, wir machen Russisch. Ja. Da amüsiere ich mich damit. Weil die Übersetzung ist wirklich katastrophal. Weil Russisch ist so speziell in ihrer Sprache. Nee, ist schwierig. Ich habe versucht, ein Video zu übersetzen, also ohne Vedun wäre ich da auch nicht weitergekommen. Ne? Thema Augenfarben. Britta, du hast sehr, sehr viele Themen. Schreib mir am besten in Telegram mal noch die Themen oder wie du möchtest. Und dann habe ich das nochmal extra. Wenn du möchtest, darfst du gerne machen, mich anschreiben. Und dann nehme ich das mit auf die Liste. So Leute, ich würde sagen, lasst uns für heute zumachen. Wir entspannen uns alle. Und morgen Abend, wenn ihr Bock habt vielleicht, so ein bisschen früher, dann können wir da nochmal einen Stream machen. Und dann haben wir aber diese Woche wirklich hier volles Programm hinterlegt. Hat mir aber sehr viel Spaß gemacht und es macht mir sehr viel Spaß mit euch. Also, ihr macht mir uns richtig Mut, das weiterzumachen. Auch wenn das mal nur so rein Fernsehabend ist, sag ich mal. Gut. Ich bedanke mich bei euch allen ganz lieb, wünsche euch wirklich eine entspannte Zeit jetzt und wir sehen uns dann später. Und ich freue mich auf euch, mit euch wieder was zu schauen. Oder ich bereite, wie gesagt, noch ein bisschen was vor. Und dann gucken wir mal, dass wir ein bisschen mehr mit Deutsch hier weitermachen. Ansonsten, ja, macht's gut. Ich lasse noch 5 Minuten vielleicht nachlaufen, da könnt ihr im Chat noch schreiben, wenn ihr miteinander da was schreiben wollt. Ansonsten wisst ihr ja, wo die Möglichkeiten sind, ne? Danke, danke, danke. Habt euch alle lieb. Lasst euch nicht ärgern. Genießt die Zeit.